Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Iskon Guruvinda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. So, reading from Srimad Prabhupada Lilamrita. So, we're nearing the end of the last chapter. Prabhupada's disciples were already carrying out his instructions, but now they would have to do so without the Vapu. So I take it Prabhupada just left. We just read that Prabhupada just left his body. Without the opportunity of regularly seeing and being with him, at first this was very difficult for them to face. But those who were sincere soon realized that Srila Prabhupada had, upon his departure, given them the greatest gift of all, service and separation. Service and separation is the highest realization and ecstasy. This was the teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in regard to Lord Krishna and his foremost devotees, the gopis of Vrindavan. When Krishna left his beloved gopis and went to Mathura, never to return to them in Vrindavan, the gopis and all the other residents of Vrindavan wept piteously in separation. They so much loved Krishna that they could not live without him, and to maintain their lives they began to constantly remember and discuss his name, fame, form and entourage. By constantly remembering him in love and by anticipating his return to Vrindavan, they achieved an ecstasy of union and separation, which Gaudiya Vaishnava scholars declared to be superior even to the ecstasy the gopis felt in Krishna's presence. Because Krishna is absolute, even remembering him or chanting his name puts the devotee into direct contact with him, but because there is simultaneously a feeling of separation from him, there is an added dimension of inconceivable, simultaneous union and separation. This is the epitome of Krishna conscious realization. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, and there's a term for serving and separation. Does anybody know what that term is? Seva. Vipralamba seva. What's that saying? Absence makes the heart grow fonder, isn't it? And then when there's been some absence for a while, and then then there's meeting again, then it heightens the rasa. So this is going on in the spiritual world all the time. This and meeting is called, it's called Milan, but it's also called Samboga. Samboga and Vipralamba, always meeting and separating, meeting and separating. In this way, it's increasing the rasa, or the the living exchanges deepen infinitely with Krishna. Because Krishna is infinite and we're infinitesimal, then the scope for us deepening our relationship with Krishna is infinite. It's not stagnant. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. And it's text 23, is it? Yatambasa Prachalata. Yatambasa Prachalata. Taravo Api Chala Iva. Taravo Pi Chala Iva. Chakshusha Brahmamanena. Chakshusha Brahmamanena. Drishyate Chalativa Bu. Drishyate Chalativa Bu. Yatambasa Prachalata. Taravo Pi Chalaiva. Chakshusha Brahmamanena. Drishyate Chalativa Bu. Yatambasa Prachalata. Taravo Pi Chalaiva. Chakshusha Brahmamanena. Drishyate Chalativa Bu. Yatambasa Prachalata. Taravo Pi Chalaiva. Chakshusha Brahmamanena. Drishyate Chalativa Bu. Please chant.
Sarvopi chalaiva, Chakshusha brahmyamanena, Drishyate chalati vabu.
Ladies.
Yatambasa prachalata, Daravo api chalaiva, Chakshusha brahmyamanena, Drishyate chalati vabu. Yatambasa prachalata, Daravo api chalaiva, Chakshusha brahmyamanena, Drishyate chalati vabu.
Yata, just as ambasa by water, Pachalata, moving, Tarava, the trees on the bank of the river, Api, also, Chala, moving, Iva, as if, Chakshusha, by the eye, Brahmamanena, moving, Rishite, is seen, Chalati, moving, Iva, as if, Bu, the ground, Translation: because of the movements of the water, the trees on the bank of a river, when reflected on the water, seem to move. Similarly, when the eyes move because of some mental derangement, the land appears to move also. Please repeat: because of the movements of the water, the trees on the bank of a river, when reflected on the water, seem to move. Similarly, when the eyes move because of some mental derangement, the land appears to move also. Srila Prabhupada's purport: sometimes, because of mental derangement, the land appears to be moving. A drunkard, for example, or a person with heart disease, sometimes feels that the land is moving. Similarly, the reflections of trees in a flowing river also appear to move. These are the actions of Maya. Actually, the living entity does not move. Stanur achaloyam. The living entity does not take birth or accept death, but because of the transient, subtle, and gross bodies, the living entity appears to move from one place to another, or be dead and gone forever. As the great Bengali Vaishnava poet Jagadananda Pandit has said, Pishachi paile yena mati chana hoy, maya grasta jivera hoy se bhava udoy. According to the statement from the Prema Vivarta, when a living entity is conditioned by material nature, he is exactly like a person haunted by a ghost. One should therefore understand the fixed position of the spirit soul and how he is carried away by the waves of material nature to different bodies and different situations under lamentation and hankering. One achieves the success of life when he understands the constitutional position of his self and is undisturbed by the conditions created by material nature. Parakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa. Om Gyanantamanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Vikam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Grim Yakripatamam Bande Shri Gurum Dinitarnam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Because of the movements of the water, the trees on the bank of a river, when reflected in the water, seem to move. I'll probably start sneezing. Similarly, when the eyes move because of some mental derangement, the land appears to move also. Have you ever been in a train waiting at the station and there's a train next to you and then you see the train moving but you're not sure whether you're moving or whether they're moving? You ever experienced that? So this is the nature of this we're talking about here. And then you think, oh, we're moving, and then you realize the train disappears and you're still in the same place. And you think, oh, we're not moving. So just like that, the soul, this body appears to be moving, but actually it's an illusion. It's just like we have if we have a puppet or we have my hand under here, so it seems like the cloth is moving, and it could be chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. But actually, there's nothing happening here. We can put some eyes on it and make a character out of it, and it becomes a puppet, and we can make a story and give it a name. And then we'll fall into that illusion thinking this is real. But then I take my hand out and it just goes down again. And there was nothing there. There was no substance in the beginning. So similarly with our body, we lament. What's the first thing that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita? After, Asochanam Vasochas Tvam Pragyavadam Shabashase Gadasan Aktasam Chant Nanu Shochanti Pandita. Does anybody know the translation? Thank you. The translation for that is 2:11, isn't it? Well speaking, learned words.
You are mourning for which is not worthy of grief, the wise lament neither for the living or not for
dead. Because they understand, the wise understands that living or dead, the body is neither alive nor dead. It's always dead. It's just never alive. It appears to be alive. So when we see people lamenting at the death of a loved one, then that's quite a lamentable situation. We are feeling sorry for them because they're lamenting. They think they've lost the person, gone forever, or maybe they make something in their mind like, oh, they've gone to the great gig in the sky, or they've gone to, sometimes you see some famous musician passes, no, they've gone to join this one for the great gig in the sky, but it's just in their mind. It's mental concoction. It's not reality. Karma is what dictates where they're going and what they're going to be doing. They may be a great person in this life, they may be famous, wealthy, etc. But depending on what they've done in this life, that'll determine what's going to be in the next life, not some comment on YouTube or something. That's not going to dictate where they're going to go. So people have this sentiment because they want to feel like, we're going to a better place, and they're well-wishing in some respect. But they're well-wishing in the mode of ignorance because there's no knowledge. There's no knowledge as to what is the body, what is the soul. And this person who they're thinking is Mr. such and such or Mrs. such and such, they look like this and this is what their life's been all about. But actually, let's see if I remember the verse. Dharma sunustitapim sham vishvikshena katasuya not padayad yadira tim shrama eva hi kevalam. So this is quite a heavy verse. The occupational activities a person performs according to their own dharma, so this is even dharma, what to speak of doing adharma, are only so much useless labour if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So useless labour means that one can spend their whole lifetime doing something, endeavouring for something. It's mentioned in scripture that Maya is a person, she has potency, right? And she can give an idea to the living entity, and we chase that idea our whole life. We're chasing a dream, right? But dreams are what? When you were sleeping. And sleeping, is that the mode of goodness? Is it the mode of ignorance? Is it mode of passion? Ignorance. Occasionally we might sleep and we may dream of Krishna, that's good. We might be dreaming that we're cooking a nice feast, but you wake up and the feast isn't there, is it? It's not actually manifest. But still, it can be accepted as devotional service. A devotee can be a devotee 24 hours a day. That means even when we're sleeping, we can be chanting, we can do service. I remember on travelling book distribution, we were engaged so intensely in that one occupation, that one service, that even in the sleep, sometimes devotees would be in their sleep and they'd be on Sankirtan. You'd hear them stopping people and trying to sell a book. They were so enthusiastic, so fired up. But someone's belief in the mode of ignorance, it goes no further than dreaming. Determination in the mode of ignorance goes no further than dreaming. So therefore you get people who are armchair philosophers. So this term, it means basically they'll sit and they'll talk about so many things, but they never do anything. Typically, we used to be associated with some people who would smoke marijuana, and they would talk philosophy, and they talk, about how they're going to change the world and put the world right. But you never see anything happen. And years later, we went back to visit some of these people, and nothing has changed. So, because they may have maybe less passion, but we shouldn't mistake the mode of ignorance to be the mode of goodness. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, perhaps he was exaggerating when he said it, but he said, if I can raise one of my disciples to the mode of passion, I'd consider my movement a success. I think he was chastising the devotees because they were simply just eating and sleeping and lying about the ashram and not doing anything productive. And Prabhupada says that devotion means we have to do something. We can't just say, oh, I've got so much devotion. I'm such a great devotee. And chant with devotion. Okay, we're chanting. Would you like to do some service? No, I'm busy chanting. We've had that before. I used to know one devotee who was so expert at prolonging his japa so he could avoid doing service. So we shouldn't be avoiding doing that, because if we want to learn to love Krishna, then we have to learn about Krishna. And to learn, what activities can be pleasing to Krishna, what activities are going to attract Krishna. So these are the do's, and the don'ts are what activities are going to repel Krishna, what's going to make him distance. So if we're doing activities which are provoking the attraction to the message of the personality of Godhead, but also provoking the attraction of the Lord himself. Because Krishna, although is the all-attractive, he's attracted by the devotee's devotional service. And some of you may have heard the story before, but Indrajumna Maharaj, who's a wonderful disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he was Prabhupada's traveling servant at one time, and they arrived in London, and all the devotees met Prabhupada, and they went to Bury Place, which was the temple they had in London at the time. But Prabhupada's baggage didn't arrive, so Indrajumna Swami had to stay back and try to wait for the luggage. And meanwhile, the devotees went back to the temple. They had great kirtan, lecture, feast, etc. And finally they all took rest. And once everybody was sleeping, and it was the wee hours of the morning, then Indrajumna Swami came. Everything was quiet, no prasadam left. I don't know if there's no prasadam left, but I'm just painting the picture. Maybe somebody had kindly left him a plate somewhere. But he was feeling dejected because he had missed the kirtan and Prabhupada's talk, etc. And just being amongst all that enthusiastic association. And Prabhupada's room was at the top of the building, so he took up a few flights of steps with the luggage. And Prabhupada was still awake. Quite often Prabhupada, he would go to sleep for a couple of hours and then he'd wake up at midnight and translate. Prabhupada, he would only sleep 2, 3, 4 hours a day for many years doing like that. And then maybe have a little nap after lunch. So we shouldn't try to imitate that, because if we do, we'll just go crazy. I read one Ayurvedic massage book, and it was talking about getting enough sleep. And this is also Krishna is saying this in Bhagavad Gita: one should not eat too much, sleep, or eat too little, sleep too much, sleep too little. If we try to give up sleep artificially, prematurely, and then simply we'll create some kind of psychosis or something, paranoia. That's what happens, according to the Ayurveda. So anyway, he arrived at the top of the stairs. Prabhupada was awake, translating, and Indrajumna Swami went in, placed the cases, and played his obeisances to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada walked up to him, and as he was getting up from paying his obeisances, Prabhupada slapped him on the back, and he said, in the material world, it's very difficult to be a devotee, but when you go back to Godhead, it'll be very easy because everyone's a devotee. So you got a personal class from Srila Prabhupada right there and then. And Prabhupada would know the mood of the disciple. He's very tuned in. So such association of a devotee, it's mentioned that a moment's association with a pure devotee is more valuable than a lifetime association of a non-devotee. And what is that time measurement? Lava. Yeah, a moment is categorized as like some fraction of a second. A moment is passed by so quick you can't capture it. No, you can't really take notice of it. So this is the importance of association, as it's said in Hindi, Jaise Sangha Vaise Ranga. So by the association we become like that. So there's this question of nature and nurture, isn't there? And Prabhupada was saying that even if one is born into a good family, but if you take the wrong association, then you can become bad. Sometimes you see that. Parents, they have all best wishes for the children, And they try to protect them in so many ways, get them the best education, etc. But then they fall into the wrong company and anything can happen. Of course, other thing can happen as well. There was one tradesman I was engaging the other day, and he told me basically everybody in his family were junkies. And he said, I seen all that, I didn't want to go down that road. So he never touched this stuff. And he got himself a good education, got qualified to be an electrician, and he kept away from that altogether. So sometimes it can work the other way, where he was in that association and he's seen that, and he chose a different type of association. He chose to avoid that association. And just like all of us here, we could all be just getting back from the nightclub at this time in the morning, just going to bed. But instead, we're getting up at 4 a.m. to go to Mangalarti. We chose to do that. We chose a certain association. And this is the great thing about human form of life. We have a freedom of choice, which the other forms don't have. A dog can't get up in the morning and say, I think I'm going to Glasgow today, see if there's any bones lying about the street. And it just decides on the hard shoulder of the M74, okay, what's that? Glasgow, 15 miles. The dog doesn't have that freedom. What freedom does it have? It smells something and it's got to go where its nose takes it. Even if there's danger, sometimes its senses are so strongly attracted to something it can't stop the danger. Sometimes you see the birds on the road, and there's some roadkill on there, and the other birds are enjoying, there's so much lusting after the roadkill, they can't see the danger of the car coming, and then they become roadkill. And then another bird comes along, and they don't see their car coming. So this is like the human form of life. We're concerned about people who have left their bodies, and we lament for it. Unless you didn't like the person, maybe you rejoice. There was one time, maybe I shouldn't mention it, it's a bit political. Anyway, there's a certain person who passed away, and the people of a certain country went on the street and rejoiced because that person was such a bad person. They had a big street party because the person finally passed away. So imagine that everybody's having a great celebration because you're finally gone. Of course, when the devotees pass away, that's a different thing. Just like not so long ago, we've seen one great devotee, Kadamba Maharaj, passed away. And that is mixed feelings that devotees are feeling some lamentation, just like we're reading in Prabhupada Lilamrita. When Prabhupada left his body, then the devotees, they experienced great separation. But we're learning about this term Vipralamba Seva, or service in separation. So this is the test. If we're sincerely attached to the spiritual master, then we will serve even in the absence. I've seen this in one temple in Budapest. Maria Remetai was the temple was there back in the 90s. And there was a certain group of devotees that I didn't even know existed until a certain spiritual master came to visit, and then they all came to visit. And I got this impression that they were obviously very pleased to see the spiritual master, but when he was gone, they were gone, and we didn't see them again. And I was thinking, this is attachment to the vapu, or the physical form of the spiritual master, which is certainly, it's got value because by the spiritual master's physical presence, then he can certainly inspire and influence people in a positive way. But the better thing is that even when he's not there, that we're still at the temple doing service, not just that we're there when he's there. And then there was other devotees who were not so much in the limelight, but they were there every day serving. And Krishna notices, because Krishna's in the heart. So we have to remember that Krishna's in our heart and he sees all. And that way we know that if we're doing something which is pleasing to Krishna, we know that he's seeing it. Even if your temple authority is not seeing it, sometimes we think, I'm doing this knife service, but nobody's saying anything. And Krishna's seeing it. Of course, it's always good to get some encouragement. We always need a bit of encouragement. But a short story in relation to that. One time when I was doing full-time Sankirtan, which meant morning program, out the door 8:30 in the morning and then back around anywhere between 6:30 and 8:30 at night. And then there was one of the cooks fell ill and I was asked to cook. This was when the temple was down in Krunabhavan and the kitchen was where room 1 and 2 is just now in the Airbnb. Room 1 used to be the pot room and room 2 was the kitchen, and it was all one big room. So I'd been asked to cook, and I thought, well, I've got a full day's Sankirtan to do as well. But anyway, somehow get my round squeezed in. So I cooked for the devotees, and then I was asked to cook the next day, and then the next day. So I complained, I said, oh, this is too much service. And temple authority, at that time, Palindri, she said to me, she says, what's the problem? You're getting more service. It must mean that your chanting's good. Krishna must be pleased with your chanting. And I thought, well, that's a nice way to look at it. If Krishna's pleased with my chanting, he's giving me more service, then I better not refuse it. And this is the thing. The chanting is actually asking to be engaged in eternal loving service. And Krishna says, okay, here's some service. No. Why say no? Maybe we're not ready for it. But we have to be careful. Don't say no too many times, because Krishna may then think, okay, you're not interested, just come back when you're ready. We don't want that, do we? Shri Kodnitai Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So this Asochanam Vasochastvam, this lamentation, Prabhupada also mentions in the purport here, hankering and lamenting. Na shoshuti na kankshuti, is that right? Shoshuti na kankshuti. Hankering and lamenting. So this hankering is, we're always thinking of something in the future. We're striving to obtain something or attain something. It may be an object, it may be some status, etc. And in lamentation, we're thinking, oh, I could have done this, I should have done that, if only. You know, the coulda, woulda, shoulda mantra. And meanwhile, we're missing the very moment, the here and now. We're missing that experience of living in the moment. So when it comes to chanting japa, if we can bring our mind into the moment and not be lamenting that we had to leave the sleeping bag, you know, we're in the temple chanting, we've had a shower and everything, we're sitting here physically, but the mind's still in the sleeping bag. So it takes a little bit of effort to get it out of the sleeping bag. It's got to catch up with the physical. Or we're hankering, we're thinking, okay, let's make a plan for today. We'll use japa to make big plans. Because japa, you know, we get so much benefit from it, even physically or mentally, we become much more aware. Then we start using that, you know, to make some material plans or something. It's not the best use of the holy name. So the thing to do is actually just, wherever the mind wanders, Krishna says, just bring it back under the control of the higher self. So that means when we're chanting, all that should be happening is that we're chanting and we're hearing. Anything else is a distraction, so we keep bringing the mind back. We may have to do that for years, until actually we realize that that's what I was supposed to be doing. And even if we hear the holy name once without any distraction, then that connection with the holy name is enough to keep us inspired for a whole life. Just as much as Maya, giving a dream can cause us to chase the will o' the wisp, chase this illusion for a whole life, then simply a moment's association with a pure devotee, a moment's association with the holy name without any distraction, or a moment's darshan with the deity where the Lord lifts the veil of Maya, and momentarily you might see the Lord, that he's personally there taking our service. That's enough to keep us inspired the whole life. And whenever we're in times of doubt, we take our mind back to that and remember this was real. One time we went to Bhaktivedanta Manor. I was playing in a devotee kirtan band at the time. And 3 of us arrived at the manor. It was very busy. And the other 2 devotees were a bit overwhelmed with how busy it was. I was used to it, so I wasn't too bothered. And I wanted to go into the temple, but they were just getting a wee bit overwhelmed. So I said, oh, let's go up to Prabhupada's room, then it'll be quiet up there. So we went up. And Prabhupada's deity is on the asana there. Typically, if you've been there, you'll see that he's sitting there doing his translating work or writing. But also Prabhupada's rooms next to that, his bathroom, his bedroom were there, etc. So one of the devotees I took with us was a fairly young devotee, and he started feeling quite a different type of overwhelm. He felt overwhelmed with emotion. And I said, okay, let's go in here. And each room we went into, it's as if he was getting deeper and deeper into some presence of Srila Prabhupada. And finally went into Prabhupada's bedroom. And for some reason or other, I was also feeling it. And he turned around to me and he says, are you feeling this? And I says, yeah. And we were both just like crying. And I says to him, this is real. Don't forget. No matter what happens, take your mind back to this. This is Prabhupada giving you his blessings, that what you're doing is a good thing. But Maya is so strong, she causes forgetfulness. Even we have these transcendental experiences, and it's not that the person was expecting this. I wasn't expecting it, and certainly 2 of us weren't going in there expecting it. But when the Lord or the pure devotee gives you some mercy and gives you some connection to show you the reality of this spiritual movement, that this is none different from the spiritual world. We're like emissaries of the spiritual world when we're taking this mission, when we're engaging this service. Just like an ambassador of China, they come to this country and they're accepted to be the representative of China in all things Chinese. And when they go to their embassy, then basically they're in China. So these temples are like embassies of the spiritual world, and we are ambassadors of that spiritual transcendental world. And of course, that's not just a physical thing. It's not just like, okay, my postcode is ML110ES, Karuna Bhavan, so that means I'm in the spiritual world. But we have to be in it. You can be, just like you can be in the world and not of it, you can be in the spiritual world and not of it as well if you're not careful. There was a little story in this regard. One person was visiting Jagannath Puri, one of the places of pilgrimage in India. And he was so excited about going to see Lord Jagannath. He was asking some local, where is Jagannath? He said, oh, just go up there, round the corner and up the street. He says, oh, you're so lucky living here. You can see him every day. He says, do you go and see him every day? He says, no, I can see him any day. I can see him anytime. So he spent his life just so I can see him anytime, and he never seen him. So we don't want to be like that, misfortunate that we miss our fortune. The fortune is there, but we miss it. So the regular attendance of Srimad Bhagavatam class, regular hearing, regular chanting, regular engaging in service, then this keeps our consciousness above the lower modes of material nature. So in the beginning of Bhagavatam, this is also mentioned just as sometimes one may see land on water, or they may see a mirage, water on land. Typically, you've heard stories or you may have seen movies where someone's stranded in the desert and they're thirsty and they're parched, and they're in the distance they see some water and they start running to it. And by that running, they get more dehydrated and they're thinking, oh, we're nearly there, it's just on the next horizon. So this is the nature of Maya. She makes us think that we're just going to get satisfaction. We're nearly there. Oh, we've almost got it that time. If we just make this little adjustment, then it'll be okay. And we've been making adjustments for millions of births. And here we are in another body, still trying to make some adjustments, thinking that this life will make the right adjustments. And even if you do make the right adjustments according to your own mental concoction, then how long will they be there for? It's like sometimes you see when someone was young, they maybe desired that they could have a certain type of car, and then they work all their life and they get old enough to afford to buy it and the time to drive it. But you see the car is like some ancient relic. You know, what seemed to be like a really cool sports car, it's just like a tiny little rinky-dink dinky toy. And you feel quite sorry, you think, oh, poor guy's, you know, trying to fulfill his dream, reliving his youth. And you see them dressing up quite young as well. And sometimes they have this middle-age crisis where which is, the funny thing is they call it a middle-age crisis, but the crisis hasn't come yet. The crisis comes at the end of the life. The middle-age crisis is simply, it's because the desire to enjoy material nature is there, and they want to live eternally, and they see it slipping away, then it becomes a crisis. But actually, what is it really? It's a notice, it's a notification from Yamaraj saying, don't forget you're eternal, you're not this body, you're growing old. You thought it would never happen. Check out the grey hairs, check out the wrinkles, the crow's feet. You can try your Botox, but look how ridiculous you look. You know, sometimes you see somebody who is very beautiful in their youth, and they try to relive that youth by injecting various things in, and they just look terrible. You think they'd be better just growing old gracefully. But the living entity is so much, you can't fault them in one sense, because it's actually showing the nature of the soul coming through, of the desire to live eternally and youthfully, and that is there. It's just that because we're not, they're thinking they're the body, they're trying to make the body eternally youthful. But who is there? What age is the oldest person in the world at the moment? Anybody get any idea? 100 and something? 104. Okay, is there anybody who we know has lived to 150? Of all the thousands and thousands of years that have passed, there's nobody on record that's lived to that age, is there? Not that we know of. There may be some sages and yogis who have got some mystic power, because they say your life is counted in your breaths. So the yogis, they slow down their breathing, and therefore they live a long, long time. And of course, it's not so much the length of time that you live, is it? Because a tortoise can live a long time. Just like we have a friend, Dorothy, she's got a tortoise who belonged to one old lady she used to know. She had it since she was a child, and the tortoise is about 90 odd. It's about that size. And it's still pretty active. If you put out the right foodstuff, you'll see it practically galloping towards it. Very slow movement. So if you want it to live long, maybe you can just start moving very slowly. But you might get to 70 years old and it doesn't work. You think, oh, that didn't work. Next life we'll try something else. But we don't have that time, do we? We want to make use of this lifetime. And the best use of this time is to become self-realized. And self-realization means to realize what we are and to also understand what we're not. And it's fairly simple. One of the first things that struck me when I was reading Srila Prabhupada's literature, I had a Back to Godhead magazine, and I heard this phrase, you're not the body, or you're not that body, and I was thinking, what body? That body? I'm not that body, yeah. I don't quite understand the phraseology. It was all quite new. And and then Prabhupada broke it down. He says, so you can ask yourself, am I these bones? Am I this blood? If you get a blood transfusion, you're still the same person. You know, if you lose some blood, and you're generating so much blood all the time, it's not you get the same blood in your body since the day you were born. And if you lose a limb, it's not that you're... he was asking, so if you analyze the ingredients of the body, like mucus, bile, skin, tissue, blood, muscle, all these things, we can't say that we are any of these things, because without them we would still exist. And then to the more subtle elements, which is the mind and intelligence and false ego. So the mind is our mind. We make up our mind. We change our mind. So it's our mind to make up or to change, isn't it? You can choose to change your mind or not. Say you have a certain concept of something and someone's trying to convince you, you could say, okay, that sounds reasonable, I'll allow that. Or, nah, I don't buy that. We can choose. Then intelligence, we can use our intelligence or we can not use our intelligence. Have you ever been in a situation where you're about to do something, you think this is wrong or this is dangerous or this is going to result in something negative, and your intelligence telling you, but you think, no, I'll just do it anyway. And then you do it and then the result is negative. And someone comes on and says, why'd you do that? Oh, no, I shouldn't have done it. I should have listened to my better self. Or I remember when I was young, my mother would say, why don't you use your intelligence? So it's your intelligence to use or not. So who's you? Who's that you that can use the intelligence? Who is it that has the mind that they can change? And then the false ego, that's the most subtle of all, where we identify with these different subtle and material elements. And as we identify with them, then they carry on, just as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Then the subtle body of the living entity is carried from one body to another. And we take on that certain type of eyes, nose, mouth, etc., according to the desires we cultivated in this lifetime. And this is another type of Krishna's mercy. Krishna says, so you want to do this, you want to do that, then this is the type of body suited for that. Why have a human body if you don't want to act like a human? You may as well become a dog. That's what you want to be. You may as well become a tiger or a snake. You behave like that, you get the body to suit that. Makes sense. But so this human form of life is an opportunity where we can break that cycle of samsara, the repeated cycle of birth and death. And what is it which is energizing that wheel? Can anyone say? So what's turning that wheel of samsara? What's keeping that perpetuated? Yeah, basically karma, and which is the result of our desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, yeah. But actually, we're not enjoying separately from Krishna, we're simply enjoying Krishna's external energy. And they say there's nothing which doesn't exist. There's nothing in existence which is not Krishna except for Maya, and that's also Krishna. So this is called achintya, beda, beda tattva, simultaneously, inconceivable, simultaneously one and different. So it's Krishna's separated energies. So we can enjoy Krishna's separated energy, which is an inferior energy, and we are the superior energy. And therefore we dull down our consciousness by trying to enjoy the inferior energy. Or we can try to connect with superior energy, and this will elevate our consciousness. So in the beginning, it's quite difficult because we're so conditioned, even in this lifetime, even if you can consider there was no previous life, just even this lifetime itself, from the word go, from the day we're born, there's so much conditioning there. What to speak of lifetimes of conditioning. But still, even though we're following this material conditioning, Prabhupada refers to it as second nature. And it is second nature. We do things simply by habit, second nature, but it's not our first nature. So we have a first nature. So by regular spiritual activities and by training, then we can get in touch with our first nature, which can then transcend that second nature, which is material nature. And even if there's still some residual conditioning there, if we're wholeheartedly engaged in Krishna's service, then at the time of this leaving this body, then just as thunder and lightning happen simultaneously, then we will leave this body and be in the spiritual world simultaneously. We won't even notice we've left this world. So just like we know how when you see some lightning and then you count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So you're counting 1 second. So apparently 1 second is, each second is how many miles away the lightning is. When you see the lightning and then you hear the thunder after so many seconds, that's how many miles away. But if you see the lightning and the thunder happens at the same time, that means it's right on top of you. It means there's no separation of time there. So this is described that when one is Krishna conscious at the time of death, it happens simultaneously where you don't even notice that you've left this body. What happens is you're chanting, and then when your chanting becomes pure, then you start to see pastimes of the Lord within your heart and mind, and then you start to see a certain person in those pastimes, and that person is you. And then actually you start to be in that, and you've already left your body. You haven't even noticed. This is described in the Shastra. So this is one way it's understood for those fortunate devotees. But also, Prabhupada says that even if at the time of death you have difficulty remembering Krishna, then if you dedicate your life to this Sankirtan movement, Lord Chaitanya will force his way into your mind, even if you have difficulty to remember. Because the mind is so powerful. We have no idea how powerful this mind is. We've given over so much control to it. We've given over so much power to it. We've disempowered ourselves. You ever experienced that with a person? Perhaps you give them power over you and you kind of regret it and then you want to try to take it back somehow. So we've done this to ourselves with the mind. We've given over power of attorney to the mind, but we can claim it back by engaging in devotional service. So there's some wonderful songs written by the Vaishnava Acharyas, the devotees in our line. My dear mind, you are no Vaishnava. So they don't try to fight with the mind, they make friends with my dear mind. Because if you just try to fight with the mind, that's also the mind. It's another trick of the mind, a trick of Maya. My dear mind, just worship the son of Maharaj Nanda. So he's trying to make friends with the mind and encouraging the mind to engage in devotional service. Like Haridas Thakur, there was some people were envious of him and they tried to make him fall down with a prostitute. So they paid this prostitute to go and see him in the middle of the night. He'd be chanting 3 times 64 rounds a day, which means basically he's up all night chanting. So they sent some prostitute to distract him. And she made a proposition and he says, my dear Mataji, simply just sit and chant. And because I have vowed to chant so many rounds, then first let me finish chanting and then we shall enjoy. So she thought, okay, good, I'll be able to do the job I've been sent to do. So he was just chanting, and she was joining chanting as well. And then she fell asleep and got up in the morning and he was still chanting and she went away. And so she did this 3 nights running. And finally, after the 3 nights, she was so purified by the chanting that she broke down and says, oh, the real intention of me being here is not a good intention. And he said, I know. But the only reason I remained here, I knew why you came. The only reason I remained here was to deliver you. And she became a great devotee, actually. So by the power of association of devotees, then we all need that association. It's not that someone doesn't need that association. Even Prabhupada himself, he was praying to the deities and devotees said, oh, Prabhupada, what are you praying for? What are you praying when you're in front of Krishna? And he said, I'm praying that I never fall down. He said, oh, you'll never fall down? He says, yes, because I'm praying that I never fall down. So even the pure devotee doesn't think, I'm a pure devotee, I'm okay. Maya can't touch me. As soon as you think that, Maya's in. Maya's already there. We've seen that. We've seen one very elevated devotee. He was basically challenging Maya, and he didn't last because Daivi Hisha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. Daivi means divine. This divine energy of mine known as Maya, it's a divine energy of Krishna. She's actually appointed by Krishna. She's empowered by Krishna. We cannot overcome. We're only jiva, infinitesimal, and Maya has got such potency, she's controlling unlimited jivas. So how can we overcome Maya? Not possible. Only by mam eva mye prapadyante, mam etam tarantite, by prapadyante, surrender to Krishna, then we can cross, because Krishna protects. He'll just say, okay, Maya, I've got this one, you step back. I'll take care of him. I'll take care of her. This one's mine. And even if some difficulty, Krishna also protects. Even if there's some fall down, it's not that it's the end of the road. I may as well pack it in. Because, as we were saying earlier, Prabhupada said, it's very difficult to be a devotee in the material world. And Krishna appreciates how difficult it is because there's so many challenges. Of course, we've created those challenges for ourselves, but nevertheless, Krishna is very compassionate. He's not saying, well, tough luck, you made your own bed, lie in it. Sometimes you make your bed, you don't make it properly, and there's a big lump underneath, and you lie in it and you're complaining, oh, this bed's terrible. Yeah, but who made it? So, of course, we do make our own bed and we may have to lie in it, but it doesn't mean to say we have to lie there and lie in it. We can straighten it up. So this Krishna conscious movement has given us an opportunity to get up out of the mode of ignorance, make our bed properly. And then there was one more point just to quickly mention. Yet one achieves success of life when they understand the constitutional position of the self and is undisturbed by the conditions created by material nature. And this is what Krishna is saying also 2 verses later. Matrasparshasta konteya shitoshna sukadukada agamapaino nityas tam stitiksha bharata. So just as the winter and summer seasons are coming and going, then happiness and stress is coming and going, and a wise person, and they learn to tolerate. And they learn to tolerate the secrets in the verse itself because we understand that they're coming and going. If we think some difficulty come along and it was never going to leave, then it'd be difficult to tolerate, wouldn't it? But in the knowledge that something has came, it will go. Everything we've experienced has came, it has went. Then we can tolerate. And the more we become fixed in that, then the more we become undisturbed by the conditions created by material nature. Okay, we'll just stop there. Anyone get any questions or comments? Yes.
You were mentioning about service and like how Bhagavatam Kirtan. So would we give seva that we're doing the first priority, then joining Kirtan or being part of Kirtan dance? Is that right?
I missed the last part. What was it?
So do we give seva the first priority, then being part of Kirtan?
It depends. It depends what's needed. Sometimes we have to do the needful. It's like some devotees may have wished they went to Wales for Rath Yatra, but we couldn't all go because we've got other things to do. And some of us didn't go to Wales, and some of us didn't go to Manchester because we're doing some other seva. So it depends if something's needed. It's like everybody wants to do the kirtan, but nobody wants to go and cook. Then after the kirtan's finished, and you say, okay, what's for the feast? Nothing, because all the cooks were in the kirtan. But the thing with seva is it should be reciprocal. We have to appreciate everyone's seva, that we're all doing a little part here. It's just like in a machine, you have so many components in the machine, like an engine. You've got the crankshaft, the conrod, the piston, the cylinder head, the valves, all these different things. You take one thing out of it. If the valve says, okay, I don't feel appreciated, I'm out of this game, then the engine, it's just not going to work, is it? It's like, oh, come back. Sorry about that. You're really important. You're as important as anyone else. So we have to appreciate each other's service. Like, if we think that we should just be served, but we shouldn't do any service, then that's just bogus. That's just not the mood, is it? It's not a mood of a community. Sometimes you see people, even they cry out, oh, where's the community spirit? You didn't do this for me. It's like, well, what have you done to be part of the community? So it's reciprocation and appreciation. So We used to, back in the very early days where we had Krishna Bhavan, we used to, when we did book distribution, we'd arrange with people we'd met during the week or who are meeting us regularly to meet us in Glasgow, George Square, and we'd pick them up with a vehicle and bring them back, have kirtan class beside them and take them back. And the idea is to encourage them to become devotees too, and some would, but some of them become what you call freeloaders, right? You know, everyone knows what a freeloader is. Freeloader means that someone is just, if it's going for free, I'll take it, but don't ask anything from me. As soon as you put a price on something, they don't want it any longer. Freeloader, just takers. You get takers and you get givers, right? So some people are just takers. So then it come to the point where some of them just weren't getting the message that devotees were serving them, showing them this is a mood of service. We're all serving, but they were seeing the devotees as their servants. You know, oh, give me more of that. You know, what kind of way is that to serve me? So we shouldn't have this mood that finally people are recognizing that I'm to be served. But no, but we actually, sometimes we feel like, well, this devotee is serving me. How can I serve them in return? And this is what the temple management do. They try to engage everybody in some service. So we're all doing a part. We're all playing a little part. We're all a little component of the machine, and the whole machine works. And sometimes we play part of one component, and sometimes we're at another part. And we get so much experience, so much opportunity. And even we get often, the opportunities are offered to do something we've never done before. And we think, in our mind, we're thinking, I can't do that. And that may be true, but Krishna is giving you the opportunity to try and see what happens. So if someone's offering us some service, that means they recognize that we've got a good service attitude. We might miss a kirtan because we've been asked to do some service. So that's a reward. It's not a punishment. Is that okay? Okay. Iskon Guru Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.